Well, and I think from a shelter's perspective, we've seen this a number of times where people will come in and they want to adopt from us, and sometimes it's a situation where they don't understand the reason for all the questions and those kinds of things. And we have heard, and you openly admit that from a rescue perspective, you guys are a little bit more in-depth sometimes than maybe a shelter would be. But you also have the resources for that as well. A shelter obviously is restrictive as far as how many animals they can take in and how many they're holding as far as dogs go. So obviously moving animals out on a regular basis, whereas you're in a home environment, there's not maybe that sense of urgency.
Right. There's not so much of a timeline. I mean, we basically will foster the dogs until we find the right home. I mean, and sometimes it takes 2 weeks, sometimes it takes 2 months, and sometimes it takes up to a year to find just the right home.
Well, Debbie, I got to tell you though too, like we've worked with a number of rescues over the years, and the dedication that you guys do is absolutely amazing. Because this is volunteer. You're not getting paid for it. You're not doing. I mean, you're doing this because you literally love dogs and you love this particular breed, and it's just amazing to me the passion and compassion that that rescue groups have, and the people who do this. I mean, it's pretty intense.
There's an incredible amount of commitment out there. There's story after story of what some rescue volunteers go through to save one dog, or what a rescue group will go through.
When I'm looking for a rescue, how do I know that you're a reputable rescue? How do I know that you're not just somebody who's bred these dogs and is saying, well, rescue my puppies or rescue my dogs? How do I know that? What are things that the public can look for to know that they're dealing with a reputable rescue group?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, first of all, reputable rescues their dogs are in foster homes. They're not in a barn somewhere, living in a barn, and they're trying to adopt them out. They're all in foster homes. Rescues will do thorough veterinary examinations and treatment if necessary. The dogs will all be spayed and neutered before they are.
So those are records I can ask to see those medical
That's
records.
right.
You're going to share that with people.
And there's a comprehensive application process with a reputable rescue. And obviously, if they're a 501c3, that's a plus.
But they're not always.
But they're not always, and that doesn't mean they're not a good rescue. And many times you can find reputable rescues just through word of mouth. I used this rescue, they were very good, I went through this process. And many times you can also get referrals from shelters who have worked with reputable rescues. So there's a lot of different ways you can.
Can you also ask, if I was going to get a dog from you, could I ask your rescue, can I talk to some of your previous adopters,
I don't know if we've ever had that request, but I'm sure we could probably arrange something like that if necessary. I mean, with their
kind of references or reference letters.
We do. Our rescue does reference checks. We check with friends. We do vet checks.
Well, a lot of times what we'll do too, Cheryl, on the other end is if we're not familiar with a particular rescue that we want to use, we'll ask them, have you worked with other shelters? And then we'll contact those shelters to see if their experience with them and how much they know about them.
So there are checks and balances.
Oh, sure, there really are. Just like everything else, and you know this. There's good shelters, there's bad shelters. There's good breeders, there's bad breeders, and there's good rescues and bad rescues. I mean, so people need to do their homework. And I think that's what we need to just encourage the general public is that, you just don't do it at face value, because there are a lot of breeders masking as rescues. There are a lot of puppy mills masking as, save our dogs. We've had a couple occasions, and it's not rare for people to get animals off of Craigslist, and especially purebreds, and then breed them themselves, and then offer them up as rescues, and then of course they'll get some substantial money for these animals.
And that's why all reputable rescues will spay and neuter their animals before they're adopted out. Right. And they also, our rescue at least, ensures that other dogs in that person's home have been spayed and neutered. So we're pretty thorough that way.
Well, I would imagine that just like the Humane Society, we have an adoption fee. Do rescues charge an adoption fee? And if so, what does that adoption fee help to cover for the rescues?
We do charge an adoption fee, which really just defrays the costs of preparing an animal to go to a new home, because most of the animals we get in have not been to the vet for a long time, are not in good condition. They probably need dentals, they may need some behavior modification or some training. They most likely are not neutered or spayed. So there's a lot of upfront costs involved in getting a dog ready to go to its new forever home. So unfortunately, the adoption fees help, but they certainly don't cover the cost of what it takes
And
to get a
we
dog.
certainly can relate to that, because by the time you invest that medical, for basic vaccinations, you're, spaying and neutering, like you said, the dentals, even ear mites, those types of things, treating for parasites, that all adds up.
Right, and
it
in our
takes a
case,
toll.
grooming, this breed requires grooming, regular grooming, and most dogs that we come in, are in pretty deplorable condition, and so one of the first things we have to do is get them to a groomer. So.
Well, and I think we should be really upfront and say that sometimes that adoption cost can, when people first hear it, they're surprised how substantial it is, and I'm not sure what you guys charge, but it's not uncommon to get $300 to $400 for through a rescue for an adoption fee. But you said it yourself, Cheryl. I mean, we talk about this all the time about like the number of animals that come through and how much medical care they need and how much we invest into those animals. And we're a nonprofit organization where obviously we're a business, but these are volunteers. These are people who are. So I think, in fairness to the rescues.
Well, and I think people in general need to understand that whether you're a humane society or you're a rescue group, if you adopt a dog and it's not spayed or neutered, you're looking at $150 to $250 to $300 to have them spayed or neutered right up front.
Right up front.
And
Just for the
that
surgery.
right, and that doesn't include all the other things that either your humane society or your rescue group has done. And so here again, I think it's for people thinking about getting pets to check into what is the cost of veterinary care. It's kind of a reality check.
It is a reality
it's
check.
like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, it is a reality check. There's no question. I mean, and all of us can speak to that. Is that it is very costly, or there's substantial cost attached to it.
But then also that adoption fee, whether it be at a rescue group or the Humane Society, by people paying those, it helps keep those organizations going so it can benefit the next dog that comes in.
Right.
Because unfortunately, we all know that there's going to be more dogs.
And you never recover your costs. You from
No.
an operational
No,
standpoint,
we never
you
do.
never recover your cost, and we all know that because But sometimes the general public just doesn't see it that way. They just think, how can they charge that much for an animal? And I mean, there really is some.
Right. Or you're a nonprofit organization. Why are you charging at all? And it's like, well, how can you keep going? I mean, unless you have some other form of income,
Someone's talking to
you
us.
know, how are you going to keep doing the rescue?
Right.
And it's like a business. You have to keep.
Right.
You have to have.
And as a
funds.
a volunteer-run group, we cover many of the expenses with our own personal funds. So we do some fundraising activities, and occasionally we'll get a private donation. But a good majority of the funds come from various volunteers' private personal funds.
Well, you brought two little guests with you today, and I think it'd be kind of nice to introduce them and maybe tell a little bit about their stories. And